Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. Today is a new series where I want to help players progress in Ragnarok Mobile as a DPS class. Whether you're new to the game, free to play or semi-free to play, I'll share my experiences in Ragnarok Mobile on the best ways to progress in the game. I'll be sharing some essential cards and some progression, and I won't be sharing endgame MVP cards since those are often hard to get and very expensive. I also avoid event cards as I want people to be able to get these cards at any time. I've made about 5 free-to-play accounts, one of which is this free-to-play account that is capable of damaging even solo legend bosses at 15% deposit and no MVP cards, so I've definitely experienced the pain of being free-to-play, but it's definitely possible to do quite well. So even without endgame cards, you can still boost your damage like crazy with a low investment. If you're new to the game, the best weapon cards you can invest in early on is the rocker card for 100 attack if you're a physical damage class, or the familiar card for the 100 magic attack if you're a magic damage class. Early on, you don't have much raw attack, so this is an enormous boost for a very low cost. Next, for physical damage classes, you want to save up for the Minoris card. This is the key card for taking down bosses since most bosses are large sized. Also, the Minoris deposit effect is extremely important. If you're able to get more than 50% damage to large monsters, then you'll get 50% ignore defense, which is incredibly important for dealing damage. For brave instances, you'll want about 180% ignore defense, which means 50% makes a big difference. And later on for legend instances, you need 200% ignore defense, so it's definitely much needed. The Minoris card is expensive, but make sure you do Battle of Cake each week so you have a chance to claim one. You'll need 3 because you need 2 in your weapon and 1 deposited, so overall it's quite expensive but definitely worth the investment over time. For mid-game, definitely get the Minoris Star card. This is one of the best weapon cards in the game for PvE for physical damage classes, and many endgame people use this as well. Next, for magic classes, the Abysmal Knight card for early game or the Abysmal Knight Star card for the mid game is quite good. This lets you do extra damage to MVP and mini monsters. Next, I'd recommend the Shell Chapette card for the magic crit, which is one of the best ways to boost your damage as a magic class. For mid game, you can also invest in the Shell Chapette Star card. However, I'd only invest in these if you have other spell crit gear, which unfortunately are gachas. But luckily, many magic crit items are on the Time Wish machine, so you have a chance to get them to try out this popular build. Now, many people may use 1 or more Shell Chapette Star cards, so if you go down the magic route, this is definitely a very good investment. Next, for offhand, if you're a physical DPS, then the White Knight card is amazing. The 3% damage to large monsters is important as an activator for the Minoris card deposit. In the past, getting extra damage to large monsters was expensive or random, but now everyone can do this with this card. Next, if you're a ranged auto attacker, then Soul Morpho card is one of my favorite cards to use since it gives plus 5 dex and critical damage plus 5%. Next, for magic, one of the best in slot is the Wicked Sunflower Star card, which looks at your offhand refined level and increases the AoE skill magic damage by 1%. Many endgame people use this card as well if they don't have any MVP cards, and this is fantastic. Definitely invest in this if you use magic AoE skills. Next, here are some elemental damage increasing cards which are great for physical damage users, which is one of the reasons I find gearing magic classes to be much more expensive for PvE. Lu does 10% damage to undead monsters, which is great against the dragon in Museum and also PSR. Next, Water Monster card does 10% damage to fire monsters, which is great against the Golem in Isles. And the Dark Shadow card does 5% damage to dark monsters, which is great for parties that are dark converting in instances like the White Star Airship. Next, for mid-game, these cards are great for both physical and magic classes. First is the Anubis Star card, which is great for the 5% damage to all races. But a very popular card is the Alice Star card for the 15% damage to MVP and mini monsters, which is one of the best free-to-play cards for offhand. Next, for armor, the Moon X Star card is one of my favorite cards. It gives both ignore defense 15% and ignore magic defense plus 15%. This makes it great for both physical and magic classes. Trying to get high ignore defense is hard, so I've often used this card on many free-to-play accounts. Next, physical damage users can also use the Archer Skeleton Star card for the 5% attack, If you want a defensive option, I'd also recommend the Accessory card, which turns your armor's element into poison. With the exception of holy damage, you're taking reduced damage by many popular elements. A dead DPS can't do any damage, so having some survivability is nice, and the Accessory card is a cheap way to do this. Next for Garment, the Marionette card is great for the 3% damage to MVP and mini monsters. Next, the Chucky Tree Star card has great attack percentage and is a great boost for physical classes. Next for magic classes, the Harpy Star card is great for boosting your magic attack percentage. This card is great for mid-game as well. Next for physical damage in classes, there are a few popular options for mid-game. The Vagabond Wolf Star card adds great attack percentage, the Dragonfly Star card is one of the best in slots for auto attack classes, and the Mastering Star card is great for getting physical damage increase if you're investing heavily into luck. For my auto attack classes, I still use the Dragonfly Star card, so it's definitely worth an investment, and I still think the Vagabond Wolf Star card is a great investment, and I used to use this a lot before I replaced this with an MVP card. Next for footgear, the Water Spirit Turtle card provides 8% movement speed. Movement speed is vital for dodging attacks and comes in handy for farming too. Also, some classes deal more damage based on move speed, so that's nice as well. Next for magic users, the Familiar Star card is great for the 3% magic attack. Next for mid-game, the Flute Player Star card is very popular as it gives you 15% movement speed. However, it is quite pricey, and I'd say the Water Spirit Turtle card is good enough for most people. Unless you get more damage based on your movement speed like some classes, then it's a nice to have for mid-game. Next for accessories, the Moonlight Tendrillion card is great for the 2% skill damage and is amazing for both physical and magic skill users for quite a cheap price as well. For mid-game, the Moonlight Tendrillion Star card is great and adds damage to non-demi humans plus 3% as well. This is a very commonly used card, especially if you don't have any mini or MVP cards, and I often use this on my main account, especially if I don't feel like switching accessory cards. Next, magic and physical classes can also invest in the Zipper Bear Star card for the 3% attack and 3% magic attack. This is a nice alternative if you don't have the Moonlight Tendrillion Star card. Next for auto attack users, you should equip one Greatest General card. The 3% chance to get 10% final damage is huge, and this is especially good for longer fights where the chance of activating it is quite consistent. Next are 3 common cards I use on my main account, and many endgame players use these as well. First, the Scarecrow card is incredible versus the Museum Dragon and the PSR Dragon due to 10% damage to undead monsters. Next, Malgod card is great for the 2nd floor of Isles and also the 2nd floor of Museum due to the 15% damage to ghost monsters. Next, Santa Pouring card does 15% damage to dark monsters, which is great if people are dark converting, which is very popular in the meta these days for dealing with White Star Airship. Next, the Marine Sphere card is great because it lets you use Magnum Break. Magnum Break lets you get 20% attack damage and also converts you to fire for 10 seconds. This is also a nice temporary way to boost your damage, and it also comes in handy if you want to stop your converter, since after 10 seconds it will also reset whatever converter you're using, which is nice if you want to stay at neutral element. Finally, our Headwear Cards. I'd recommend using the Egg Star card to begin with for the 3% attack for physical damage users. Next for magic users, I'd recommend the Sealed Apocalypse card, which is great for the 10% ignore magic defense. Next for mid-game, the Andre Star card is great for the 3% penetration and 3% ignore defense. The Andre Star card is a popular card that I use on all my free-to-play physical damage classes. Well, that's all. I'd highly recommend you get some of these cheaper cards from the video since they'll give you a big boost in damage. Getting cards can be expensive from a Zenny or BCC perspective, but overall you can collect these cards and you'll definitely get much stronger. Good luck in getting stronger in Ragnarok Mobile, and stay tuned for more videos on how to get stronger in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I recommend, and if you want to learn how to get stronger, check out this playlist over here.